Welcome back, everybody. So we start the last session of the Decentralized Knowledge Graph track. In that, we have two talks, and then after that, we have a discussion. It's an open-ended discussion. First of all, let me introduce our first speaker of this session. That's Ben Clair. He's the founder and CEO of DataStake, and he will be talking about circumventing information silos in the global south through data commoditization. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's an honor to be here today. I'm gonna try and share my screen. I hope it's all working okay.
Yes.
Thank you, great. I'm not going to show you a fully implemented decentralized knowledge graph on this occasion. Rather, I will talk about the problem we faced, the solutions we have implemented, and how these solutions organically have led us to knowledge graph technology and are also naturally taking us on a path to decentralization. DataStake is an information ecosystem to transform the way we access knowledge in weak governance countries. Weak governance countries. There are countries where traditional information infrastructure has failed, fragile states. In my line of work, we also call them conflict-affected and high-risk areas. Interestingly, and not coincidentally, there are also countries that are rich in natural resources. There are parts of the world where billions of people live, where there are good days, bad days, where internet use is widespread, parts of the world like any other. And yet, the more developed world has inherent prejudice with regards to these countries. We picture them as hell on earth, plagued by corruption and diseases, surviving only through assistance. Now, you know how traditional media is being put into question these days. Suddenly we see this whole debate around mainstream media. What is fact? What is fake? Should we trust the news? Information consolidation from a broader range of sources and disintermediation are relevant topics on a global scale. In our target countries, a new data ecosystem is actually the only solution to access knowledge. I hope you can appreciate that the story of entire sub-Saharan African countries is essentially being written by a small group of foreign journalists and activists, and it's been the case for decades. We don't ask Congolese people what's happening in their neighborhood, we ask foreign correspondents. Stereotypes get peddled, and when we have so few information sources, when the name of many villages is not featured on Google Maps, good luck conducting a market research or measuring the results of international charity fundings. At DataStake, we asked ourselves how to access continuous, reliable data from those seemingly inaccessible places. Weak governance countries are considered high risk, mostly because risk cannot even be measured. Data is hard to collect due to logistical and security conditions. It takes some effort to visit communities, particularly in rural areas. Data is expensive, typically involves the commissioning of international experts to visit those places. It costs $20,000 for your information to send me to a conflict zone for a week and report on what I see. And despite those costly efforts, data is unreliable. There is no efficient triangulation mechanism established. Who says your information source is objective or even competent? Data also has a short shelf life. Local contexts are very volatile, which means that by the time your expert is back, the situation has changed. By the time the report is published and the recommendations are formulated, they are outdated. So it's hard to get access to good data in resource-rich countries. And that's a problem because without information, it's hard to monitor threats. Data is what's required by supply chain regulation. You need a lot of information to procure gold and demonstrate that you're not laundering money in Central Africa, for example. You need data to prove that the coffee you buy has not been produced from child labor. It's also what investors need to identify opportunities and manage risk. Without data, banks cannot even open an account for local businesses and cooperatives. Even more importantly, development programs and global NGOs shoot in the dark. how can I claim that I'm making an impact when I cannot even measure the challenge reliably? And so data to us is the single common denominator to many of those countries' challenges. A broader market for better data. Well, I don't need to further delve into this right here, but I have not even listed carbon offset schemes here, millions of dollars pouring in and no data to back local tree planting claims. With good data, you could better recognize migration patterns. You could even promote tourism in uncharted, beautiful corners of the world. But data from those countries is just bad, and the need for better insight is immense. The good news is that information is everywhere. Internet use is widespread across Africa, for instance. I am part of many WhatsApp and Telegram groups where local perspectives are actually shared. But because of the disorganized nature of reporting, those local voices tend to be ignored. Various charities, humanitarian initiatives, companies, and experts operate locally, but in silos. For the businesses established on the ground, it is more lucrative to hide problems than to make any resolution effort. For some officials, corruption is a high reward, low risk practice, for it's so hard to demonstrate any accountability. And because nobody can materialize the value of the information they hold, information is not shared. We see huge overlaps between data collected by private systems, auditors, or certification programs. At DataStake, we help organize local information so that it's more valuable. And instead of capturing that value ourselves, like traditional systems, we help our users, the primary sources of information, monetize their own data. Everything we do is focused on enabling information holders to generate value from their knowledge. It's a simple marketplace model. We've engaged with as many clients as possible to understand the nature of the information they need. This helped us delineate the product, which is the data asset, data as an asset. And what do we mean by data? For instance, the name of the village, as I said earlier, not even known to Google. The number of children at school today, the list of traders involved at the local market, the price of gold locally, or a number of fatalities linked to an incident, number of smartphone users, etc. We're particularly interested in data points which are observable, do not require specific expertise, and as such may be compiled in a range of circumstances by a wide range of independent witnesses. The last remaining question was how to aggregate data supply. And I won't get into the specifics, as my colleague Firuza will be presenting on that subject at the KGC event on Thursday, I believe. But essentially, we organize information into key atomic subjects. There are subjects of interest irrespective of your use case. Locations, for instance, are keynotes. Imagine querying a village in Burundi and finding all available information sources linked to that village. Then we map entities, of course. That's because information on individuals, companies, and other organizations is critical to many engagement models, from financial inclusion to legal compliance to beneficiary mapping. Events are another critical subject. Incidents, there can be incidents or corrective action. They affect the state of other subjects. They may be reported differently by local sources and require triangulation. And lastly, we have documents. To put it simply, documents are unstructured data associated with the other subjects. Of course, we don't only map these subjects to their available information sources, but also in terms of their relationship with each other. Events associated with a location, perpetrators and victims of an incident, association between two individuals, etc. And the informational content attached to each node can be further granularized. Our goal is to map available information on any given data point held across non-collaborative systems and databases. To maximize data supply, available data supply, you need to enforce a standard for data compilation. And when data is already compiled, it's existing data, you need to apply that same standard to map this existing knowledge. Users of our connected applications are informed about the amount and type of granular data that they hold in their system. They can then decide who to share it with and under what conditions. Our users' interface with the ecosystem is the data wallet, which we started to build into our product. The intent of the data wallet is to help users map their own available data against our reference knowledge graph, get a sense for the value of their data. It's quite notional at this stage. Select which data they may wish to make discoverable, find extra clients for their available data, and find extra information sources for their data points of interest. The basic use case was to map open data, and it's still to map open data to our graph, although there isn't much to get excited about when it comes to open data in weak governance countries. A lot of the available information is at macro level or country level, like World Bank or IMF data. But we also pull from government watch lists, specific initiatives and investigations to aggregate information on our core subjects. The idea is that whether you are a buyer of battery materials, an investor in agriculture, or a security specialist, you may come across a specific location one day and wish to know all available information sources on that location, which may be scattered across a multitude of public databases. As we connect open databases to our platform, we essentially extend the value chain of data points contained in them. The less common assumption we work on is, as I think I alluded to earlier, is that we help organizations map their available data at granular level. They are more likely to recycle it this way. Take a bank. A bank is not your most obvious candidate for selling information, particularly information on its business clients. That information has huge privacy, confidentiality, and sensitivity attached to it. It is formatted and organized in accordance with the bank's objectives, using the bank's custom data architecture. As far as I'm concerned, the information held by a bank on a corporate client is unstructured and private. It has little recyclability potential outside the bank. But now, if I allow the bank to map that data against our reference graph, it turns out that part of the data they hold can actually be both shareable and valuable. The bank is now able to set sharing preferences for more specific data sets, registration address, shareholding structure, copy of the financial statements. Because remember, in weak governance countries, the countries where we work, there may not be an official trade registry, perhaps not even an official identity system. But our bank here holds that information and may, at its discretion, share it with others, maybe for a fee, maybe in return for similar information on other companies, maybe for free to support the work of charities. And most importantly, we build custom knowledge management applications for our clients. And this was actually the start of our journey. With funding from international development actors, we built applications to support local businesses and nonprofits in their activity, help them improve their performance and raise their profile through digitization. What I didn't tell you earlier is that I worked for 12 years on mining and mineral supply chain transparency. We have a bit of a network in that field, particularly in Central Africa. And so the first applications we've built help mining cooperatives organize their own information to apply for bank accounts. We also have an application that helps local NGOs organize their work and attract more funding to solve challenges in the mining sector. Funding which would previously have gone to international organizations. I think there's video here. Yeah, and those applications are pretty neat. One of our users, a local NGO in Eastern Congo, helping vulnerable groups in mining communities, actually received an innovation prize from the International Labour Organization and are now implementing mining site risk management autonomously in a way I never could do it myself, because they have access, being on the ground, they have access to much more data. Our applications are, of course, free to access from our websites. So let's consider a humanitarian program. With DataStake, it can now seamlessly consolidate information from civil society actors using this application called PME for project monitoring and evaluation. Another program may start working with one of the local organizations. That organization's work continues to leverage all the knowledge accumulated through previous work. Even when those other projects end, knowledge is mapped user-side, so primary data holders can continue to leverage and recycle their data assets. Now, as a buyer of gold, for instance, of minerals, you can use another application called CAD for Consolidated Autonomous Due Diligence. With CAD, buyers of raw materials can receive information from their supplier and their supplier's supplier in a standardized format aligned with international standard. However, that's not enough. They need evidence that their suppliers are being honest about the local context. Rather than sending an auditor, they can invite other local information sources to their due diligence effort. Information holders are right there working on humanitarian projects which fund them. Multiple actors working locally on different subjects, yet in the process collecting data for that is relevant to multiple use cases and that can be consolidated. If they agree to share that data, the gold buyer's risk management is now consolidated from multiple independent sources. The last illustration of what we are doing now, you're a bank, once again, looking to support the local small-scale mining sector. That's not an easy thing to do if you aim to comply with international regulation on money laundering and KYC requirements. Even though your potential clients organize their data professionally, you face a risk that the information they provide on themselves is not sufficient or even false. But other information sources, as we saw earlier, have gathered normalized data on your counterparty as part of their own activities. If you get them to share that knowledge with you, suddenly information on your clients gets triangulated. When it's fully granular, the value chain of data expands. The same data can have multiple uses. This is what we mean by data commoditization and recyclability. Incentivizing continuous structured data compilation at local level is the most rewarding part of our work. We build direct utility in these applications to ensure that our local users find value in them. Our tools help them organize their work. They transfer analytical capacity to them. They help them meet their stakeholders' expectations, find new sources of funding, and reassure foreign investors. But our most transformative incentive is that they now control their data. It used to be that international parties would send a template to their local partners and ask them to fill it out periodically. And there would be a different template for every funding source. Now, local organizations compile their data in our application and decide who they share it with and set the terms for that exchange. They can even monitor the chain of custody of their data, where it is shared onwards. For international companies seeking intelligence in difficult regions, our model maximizes opportunities for finding relevant information sources, for consolidation from the broadest possible range of independent sources. More information sources means continuous triangulation in complex areas. All our applications built upon a common data architecture, so local insight can now be crowdsourced from independent actors, if those actors agree to open an information channel with you. Here's some conceptual representation of our ecosystem with public tools at the top, accessible to anyone. Private custom applications, bottom left, which we built for some of our clients that are not fully satisfied with public tools. And going forward, we look to work on integrations with even third-party systems. The goal is to implement efficient processes to map any available data to our graph, maximize its query potential, and extend its value chain. Now, I told you at the beginning that I was not going to show a decentralized system. That's because none of our current clients or partners are concerned with the fact that DataStake is a platform. We could potentially curate data, eliminate inconvenient sources, tamper with local narratives. This would make us as bad as the post-colonial storytellers we hope to compete with. We see decentralization as a necessary step towards scalability. Value allocation can be more transparent. Data holders, even whistleblowers, can feel more confident about the data they make available in the ecosystem. We'll certainly be looking for partners to expand in that direction. While everyone is busy trying to make money out of money in Web3, there is an asset class that remains underappreciated. Web2 platforms designed it, they found ways to unlock value from it, and to capture that value. This platform now pose a threat to privacy, sovereignty, and objective innovation. They also hinder general information availability, as data holders don't share as much as they could. It is hard to deploy decentralized data infrastructure in the developed world because traditional information infrastructure is so firmly established. But in many fragile countries, decentralization is not just a nice thing to have, it is critical to overcome governance challenges. So by attaching a value to data which local actors can capture, we're turning transparency or transparent behaviors into a financially rewarding activity. Risk and impact measurements are subjective, but the underlying observable data to measure risk and impact is the objective commodity. Thanks for your attention, and I'd be happy to take a few questions.
All right. Thanks, Ben, for that wonderful talk. We have time for about a couple of questions from the audience. Let me start with one question that I have. So I'm from Sri Lanka, and I remember I was there when the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami happened, and I was I think high school student back then, and we helped build a platform. And I realized how information was all over, it was very chaotic, and I think this is a very wonderful platform, but if we had that at that time. But I also realized, remember that they had some issues with when the aid came to the country. It was hard to move things around, and transparency was a big issue. So, do you think that information transparency, how things are flowing around in a decentralized ecosystem, I think it's a challenging problem. Is DataStake handling that, or do you have plans to handle that? What are your thoughts on this? Basically, my question is when it comes to information transfer, with respect to things like aid and other critical resource sharing, how do you handle that in a platform?
Yeah, this links to some of the things I talked about in that at the time when digital innovation is deployed, and I was guilty of that as well back with some previous efforts in Central Africa. The sustainability of the data compilation process and the incentives for information sharing across different organizations are not necessarily fully thought through, which means that international humanitarian programs and economic development programs, which are typically scheduled for a short or medium-term period, find themselves running out of time towards the end of their respective projects to build sustainability in the data collection and sharing process. So there's a lot of digital tools that are deployed locally to compile data in a structured manner, but no thought for that. And really, through decentralization, by that I mean through allocation of data custody to the parties that are most capable of compiling data when we are not looking, and that is local actors. We believe that there is a path towards ensuring that more data becomes potentially accessible, and by handing them custody over that data, and it gives them more incentive, more comfort, more trust in terms with regards to the way that data is managed, and so incentives for actually compiling and sharing the data with interested parties. And the interested parties may be one day international aid programs working on disaster relief, but the next day or a bit later might be private sector actors looking to invest in the community. There are just many different use cases that you can envisage for the same data set that is collected locally. Similarly, you have private sector actors working on due diligence efforts that might provide insight to humanitarian projects. Hope I answered your question.
Yes. Okay. There's a question.
Hi, a nice presentation. So following up with Oshani's question as well, and what you mentioned, the local agents can report and also identify if the resources are not properly distributed and the funds and aids they get into, will there be a mechanism to share that with the, like IMF has this corruption index for certain countries and regions, like, the how the resource came and if it is not being used the same as intended to be used. So it's called the corruption index. So will that be possible to share that with others? Like, I'm not saying IMF, but other agencies and as well, so that way that an index, it helps the identify through that index.
100%. However, exclusively at the discretion of individual information holders. So DataStake would never share information with the IMF. However, if the IMF becomes interested in localized data from DataStake application users, then of course we would look to help facilitate that trade. But those local data holders would decide under what conditions they actually make their information available to the IMF. It's an interesting example because the IMF really collects data at macro level. There's nothing really localized in the data. They build country level indicators. And the problem with country level indicators is that no one is really individually accountable for them. No individual business or no individual NGO. So it's data that is not extremely actionable for local improvements. But totally, we hope to help our users make their data relevant to as many clients as possible.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
All right. So with that, let's thank our speaker again. Thank you, Ben. Keep up the great work. So next up, we have Christina, and she is the CEO of Skopje. I put in parentheses what Skopje does, but I'm pretty sure Christina will explain in more detail. And so she'll be talking about the creator economy, decentralized economy. Over to you, Christina.
Welcome, everyone, to the decade of the creator economy. Before, in version 1.0, we used to actually have to walk over to the internet. Version 2.0, the internet started following us, and incredible companies like Airbnb and Uber formed that changed our lives forever. The next decade, which is the one that we're in, is all about me, my brand, my community, my connection. And this has completely transformed the way in which individual society and collective society have changed forever. To give you an idea, the most respected members of our society, like doctors, need to have social media, like TikTok accounts. And in fact, 33% of Gen Z trust TikTok more than doctors when it comes to personal issues and matters and learning new information. So people think social media and scrolling is just a way to spend time or that it's a relaxing experience. But in reality, our whole perception and visual world is changing without really much understanding of what this is doing to our psyche and how it is changing the information in which we're sharing, in which Ben had also mentioned. My name is Christina. I'm the founder and CEO of Skopje, which is a platform where artists around the world connect, upload, and share their images that get downloaded by businesses and people all over the world for authentic and diverse and representative imagery. And they also get hired on their unique visual skills. So we have more than 7,000 skills. We have 190 countries of people from every corner of the world you can imagine that have these unique visual talents that they're looking to expand on, whether it's that they're an illustrator, whether they're a photographer, whether they've learned this new 3D, whether they're painter, graffiti artists, you can name it. The visual space has completely exploded online, and it's all kind of just sitting there on places like Instagram. So Scopio stands for Scope It Out and is a platform, an app where artists connect and really explore and expand. To bring it back to the core idea is that there are 8 billion people on the planet. 5 billion of those have a phone, and 3 billion of us have a smartphone. We're in the most creative generation in history due to the rise of smartphones and the camera that has been given to us. This generation has now experimented in ways we cannot even understand how that will change the next 100 years. And our challenge is to really reach these 3 billion people on connections and break down stereotypes, get to know each other, see places of the world that we've never been able to see before, which is a revolutionary and remarkable thing, that sitting on your computer, you could visit any place in the world or see anything that you've been curious about or learn about a new topic area on YouTube in just an hour. So I had a thought during COVID that the Black Death, or the bubonic plague, more correctly spoken, gave rise to the Renaissance. Now, the bubonic plague killed almost half of Europe, and actually a lot of children were involved. So we're lucky that that didn't happen to us during COVID, but it did create a lot of stress on the world, and that now has been released into the creative ecosystem. And I believe that's why we're in this renaissance, or this huge shift in visual change, is because of the suppression that we had during that time, the introspection, and also the depression, the suffering, the sadness, and all the negative feelings that the world had endured. So before COVID, about 1% of those on social media were earning. So we have the big time influencers, we have the celebrities, but now we have 99% of the rest of those people that are looking for connections, that are trying to get side hustles, that want to make money, that want people to recognize them, and don't have those connection points and or access to the right network. So this is the middle class that has entirely disappeared in places like the United States and the rest of the world, where you have the super rich, the private jets on Instagram, the 16-year-olds that are buying houses in Beverly Hills. And then you have the middle class that's trying to earn thousands of dollars a month to support themselves and their family on their variety of skill sets, and don't want to do the 9 to 5. I mean, look at us, every service industry. We go to a restaurant, we can't get served. And this has really created this turmoil in society amongst the middle class. Where are they going to be earning from? How many income streams are they going to have? Where are they going to get that from? But there's one thing for sure, and it's that the talent is there. Again, I mentioned something about sadness, depression. So there is really this base of like energy that has been surfaced in all of the artists that I have on the platform that I've spoken with. For example, this incredible illustrator who says, I went down an emotional spiral, feeling hopeless and lost in darkness. I had a dream about Grandpa, where he hosted a massive dinner party for me, and on an infinite long white table, and invited everyone I know. This creative thought led her into a book that is about her illustrations and her family lineage and all of the love that she has. And luckily, places like Amazon are giving us access to anybody that wants to create their own book overnight, and new platforms like ChatGPT that are writing them for us. So it's just really that creative spark. And again, this is every corner of the world, and it doesn't need to just be in the visual space, but we have musical talent and so many different emergences of these melding of creativity. So I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of these people on the Scopio podcast to learn their deepest emotions and what they're looking for. And they're really willing to experiment with new technologies. And blockchain has really opened up new opportunities for this, getting paid in crypto, collaborating on projects in new ways, reaching international markets, and doing that flat economy that we've been really talking about for a long time, but kind of are hesitant to really engage at this global scale with the freelance economy. I'm going to play for you a video now on our new app that has. What I learned in the process of creating this app, as I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, but nothing has really cemented my belief system in reinforcing positive connections around the world. After what we have seen over the past few years and how leaders have really, I think, been taking this for granted, I do believe that there are positive reinforcement mechanisms that you could build in product. I have worked with AI in a very positive way in order to leverage content and showcase the best work so that people don't have to work as hard getting it out there with all the metadata and curation that's needed in today's fast world. But most of the time on social media, when there's something negative, for example, if everybody's talking about Meghan Markle and that spirals into negativity, that becomes a trending topic on Twitter. However, who is it really trending for? So I think the platforms that we're using today, like Twitter, like Instagram, are often their algorithms are based on these negative connections, which is creating a lot of turmoil for people mentally. And it is in fact possible to build platform off of positive connections, helping each other, building community. And I hope that product owners really understand that we could have a new era of this positivity as the energy needed to boost the content across the platforms and not just negativity that's really, whether you're a celebrity or an ordinary person, really creating this negative backlash that is really harmful, especially for the younger generation who has the largest depression rates in history. So I challenge leaders today that what they say matters and how they're building their products really do matter. And you as a user to really understand how these algorithms are really affecting you mentally, and that positive reinforcement is in fact just as strong as negative. Not only is it powerful in terms of when something happens, but when something happens around the world, we are actually putting our history on these platforms. So I built Scopio as a place to save this history where people can upload their own stories, their own narratives, their own images, and we've been able to really have that as a voice for this generation. So if you're going and sharing something on social media, remember that you might have some historical piece. There might be some value there that should be there in case Instagram shuts down. You still have a copy of that content. The artist community around the world and so many people in general that are looking to make money are open to blockchain and crypto. On the other side, I work with more than 30,000 businesses that hire these artists, that buy their imagery, and they're not as open yet. So we have one side of the market that's really excited about this new technology, the other side that is apprehensive, and we'll see how that melds together within the next few years. So they are moving faster. They want equity. They want ownership. They want collaboration. A really positive example of this is when Facebook first started, Mark Zuckerberg wanted to create some like a portrait in the office and he didn't have money. So he gave a small piece of equity to an artist and that artist ended up making such a big impact in the equity ownership. I think it was like a huge amount of money. And that's the kind of collaboration where we're talking about the quality of life that artists are bringing, the quality they're bringing into the business or whatever the project is. For example, this conference, if they do have people creating the artwork, the presentations, the illustrations, the big screens, those people could get, 0.02% of the conference revenue, and that will create so much more value in the future for you. So I challenge businesses that can think of creative ways to give ownership to the artists that will give them more value. And these are all the people I serve around the world, every single corner, and creating decentralized products in a very simple way was a huge aim for mine. From the beginning, I had a global audience. And a lot of times we think, okay, let's get our local network. But if you can think of a way to make every feature easy to use without language barriers and kind of in a two-step click, then you can really expand the scope of your network. I am a new author of The Year Time Stopped, which is a best-selling book, and it was featured at the Grammys this year, given to 100 plus presenters like Rihanna, Beyonce, the First Lady, and it's 200 images and stories from 2020 from around the world, told by local people, and these are coming from Scopio's platform. So this is another way in which to use decentralization and innovation to create things beyond what we would imagine. For me as a tech entrepreneur, to write a book was something very special, and it is the winner of the Mind Award. And there's so much more incredible creative projects that these artists will.
Hey, Christina, we cannot hear you properly with the music playing. Oh.
Yes, so the book was one example of a way to take new ideas and transform it into a product that is a historic document, something that people can have value on over time. So as we think about the internet and its place in the real world, the book is a good example of how we can bring and meld both worlds together to have the knowledge and information we have on the internet meet us in the real world and become a part of our daily lives. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Christina. Any questions for Christina from the audience? I have a question. So you mentioned about metadata and that you're trying to capture the knowledge for the future. So how exactly are you using the metadata? Are you, are you creating some kind of an ontology for this, or reusing something existing, or is it more of a collaborative folksonomy kind of thing? The tags that emerge from people's contributions. So how? What's the knowledge management process that you're applying in your app?
I would first like to say on the macro, we have a very big problem in image tagging in terms of titling images. That has to do with the data sets that were available in the past, largely owned by Getty Images or the top 3 players that own the whole internet's imagery. So it is a very consolidated market that has created a lot of problems for the ability to use the diversity that has emerged online into these titles and tags. So, for example, stock photography was made in an era where you were copying real life, you were using models, you were in studios, you were faking it. But now with Scopio, for example, I've received millions of images that are real people, real lives doing real things, and those people don't match the existing data sets of like Google and Amazon when you're talking about diversity tagging, gender tagging, contextualization. For example, women working. There's a huge gap of women working imagery, a huge gap of being able to recognize that from a visual perspective, new types of families. And so there's so much error when it comes to like Google Images, how we're finding content. Oh, my Google thinks I'm talking to it. So what I have done is from day one, I started building a curator that was curating the content that I believed was the most valuable, which is not the highest quality imagery, but the most contextually important imagery that I believe people need to see. So we built a curator that's been trained on our imagery. It titles and tags images also in partnership with OpenAI. We use their search on their diversity tagging, I think, is much better than the existing players. And then we sort, we remove anything like I've refused to have content on guns, on violence, unless it's reflecting real life. We have not safe for work imagery that we've banned, but there's also a big gap for me now in all of the graphic art that's emerged from photography. So photography, this is a traditional piece like photo, but then photography has been mixed mediums now. So something like this, like the AI processor would reject it. It would say this is not a full photo. In reality, it's mixed. So and now we have tons of AI content in the world. So our existing technologies are not ready for mixed mediums in photography, and that's a huge advancement that we'll be working on. The most important thing is to have new data sets of imagery to work off of. So the more companies can partner with each other, the more they're able to open their data sets, the better that we'll be as a society in terms of what gets shown to us.
Excellent. I do have another question. So basically, with this user-generated content, ownership is a big thing, right? So, and we have heard of these stories where actually these big companies like Stable Diffusion and these generative AI companies are getting sued because they did a sloppy job in collecting the images on the web, and they collected even Getty images, and the Getty logo is appearing in the generated artwork. Now, with respect to this user-generated content, what kind of precautions or measures do you have to protect the ownership rights of your, I guess, users?
So Google Images is holding the most amount of information and imagery. When they're stealing content or taking content, it's often from Google Images. So if there's a watermark or a logo of Getty, that's going to appear. That's the biggest pool that we use, and I have friends that have been sued completely from using an image from Google, and it was actually owned by somebody else. And there is like a market for copyright infringement where they will get you, and there's traps. Like there's this fruit website that has all their images on Google, and if you use one of those images, they'll sue you for like $70,000. So it's important to use imagery legally, which is why people like free sites like Unsplash, or they will go pay at Getty or Shutterstock or Scopio. So it's important to go. But as an artist, you have to be careful. Like there's not that many places to sell your work. So let's say you are you have this beautiful photo that you've took of your wife, or that you took of like a protest that's really important, and you wanted to do something with it. You are the owner of that image, or your illustration. You're the owner of it. But when you're like, well, what does that mean? What it means is that you want to put it in a place that you want to, if you want to distribute it, that's legally distributing it for you, meaning that when you're uploading on Scopio, you're uploading saying Scopio has the right to distribute my work, but I am the copyright owner. I own this work. There are some sites that will not let you keep copyright. I do some exclusive projects with really big names where the artist is not keeping the copyright, and they need to make that decision as a business agreement. But you want to be the copyright owner forever. And then you're just giving it to someone like me as your agent, basically, to distribute that work. So that's what these platforms mean. Getty Images doesn't own all the rights. They own the right to distribute for all the people's imagery on their platform, but most of the time the owner themselves is the copyright holder. So if it's on social media and somebody uses it, there is something called the Digital Media Copyright Act, DMCA Act, which means that we can share as much as we want on social media. Like we can share a Spider-Man image and we're not going to be sued. But if you're going and printing t-shirts on that, you might be sued. So social media does protect us for sharing, which is a beautiful act that was made in order for us to express our creativity. And I think commercially it will catch up as we develop. And NFTs are one place that has changed, where logos are more accepted, and using other people's work. But that actually creates a lot of trouble. So there's this one famous work. It's the most NFT image, made the most money out of like any NFT project in photography. It's called Beeple. And it's a combination of stock photography, I think legally purchased from Adobe Stock. But nobody, there's like hundreds and hundreds of images in this piece of work. And then he edited it. And he had a big audience that purchased. I think he sold for 60 million or something. But he did not include
69 million. 69 million. I was at Consensus in Austin like a week before, and I met the purchaser of that artwork, Anand, and he mentioned, and my question was basically, why do you value it at 69 million? So that's why I remember that number. Go ahead. Sorry.
Let me tell you something, that those people, those images, if you go and look it up, they didn't make $1. So you're using hundreds and hundreds of these people from Bangladesh, from Colombia, from Nigeria, all of these people. Imagine 1% of that was given back to those people who were partially, available in that, or they were part of that creation. So people think, no, why should I? It was just, I bought it for $29 in a subscription. But we're not thinking about it the right way, because we could be flourishing our art world by doing co-ownership, but there isn't monetization models that can really split. For example, models and photos don't make money. You have to sign a permission, but you don't usually make money. And these are all ways, I think, in which we could be smart and develop new systems to give more ownership across the board. And I think it will really be a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so any questions from the audience? If not, I thank Christina. Thank you so much, Christina, for your presentation.
Happy learning.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so next we move on to an open discussion. And is it possible to get the online audience visible? And I don't know if they can talk or if they can show their faces. So this is basically a learning experience for me and the other organizers as well. This is the first time we are doing this decentralized knowledge graph track. And the first thing we actually wanted to, let me go back to my initial slide deck. All the material that you saw today will be available on our website. We have the speaker bios, there are presentation slides if they had shared with us, and also the talk abstracts. So I encourage you to go to our website to take a look at all the material. And I thanked Francois and Thomas in the morning, so I thank them again. They gave us a platform to have this session. And I also want to thank my co-organizers. And so this is the thing I wanted to kind of get to. So what are decentralized knowledge graphs? We all know that knowledge graphs are semantic networks, and blockchains are trust networks. And the goal of decentralized knowledge graphs is really to marry these two things together, semantic knowledge networks with trust networks. And I'm sure all of you have heard of this notion of Web3. And a prior version of Web3 was this notion of, oh, it's going to be semantic and everything is meaningful. I think it still holds. But now the popular interpretation of Web3 is really these ownable assets, where we have blockchains that can be used to assign some value and trade these data assets. And I think we can have an ecosystem which is both meaningful and ownable. So let me move on to the discussion points, if I can start advancing. Not advancing. Can you go to the informal discussion? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go quickly to the informal discussion. So this is really meant to kind of figure out what the audience thinks about this particular topic. And so I put down several bullet points that we can start our discussion on. So on one hand, blockchain systems are very transparent. And we want to provide privacy. I think the very first talk we heard today was about individual data storage via data pods. So that includes some kind of privacy into the mix. So privacy and transparency don't really go together. So how do we balance the two? So that's one topic that I wanted to get your thoughts on. The other one is interoperability. So I come from the knowledge graph world. I have been in the W3C ghetto for about 7 years when I was a PhD student at MIT. So I know how the standards work. I know how painful it is to have non-interoperating systems. Unfortunately, the same thing is happening in blockchain-based systems. Yes, it's good, it's decentralized, but it's also fragmented. And there are so many different interoperability solutions. So we need interoperability for interoperability solutions in the blockchain space. So I think that knowledge graphs could provide some kind of a solution for those things. And then also I want to hear your thoughts on any kind of new use cases that emerge in this space. So in today's talks, we heard about this create economy, knowledge graphs for the global south, and there are so many other application areas that you might be interested in. So I open it to the the audience to have this discussion. Maybe we can get some mics around. So it's an open floor. Any takers? Okay.
Sorry, I'm not an expert in the blockchain, but whatever I'm getting out of this session is that the marriage doesn't really work. So it's either blockchain that is working or a knowledge graph that is working, but kind of not both. Because for the knowledge graph, we really care about integrity, right? It has to be a unified, united, normalized system in order to work. When you query a knowledge graph, you kind of assume that the entire knowledge graph looks more or less the same. Once you're talking about the knowledge graph over the blockchain, you can't possibly hope for the integrity. So most of the applications that I can think about in terms of the knowledge graph wouldn't work, as far as I understand. So basically, what I'm trying to ask is there a use case when the knowledge graph on the blockchain will work, or maybe we can talk about decentralized knowledge graphs that are just not implemented over the blockchain?
Yeah, excellent question. I can hold both. Here. So I think one use case that that hasn't worked in the traditional knowledge graph space that could work with a potential marriage is in provenance. So, there are these ontologies that we have to capture all the provenance aspects. But if the goal of the ontology is to say with some reliability, some certainty that this particular assertion happened in the past, and this is who said, and this is the timestamp, anybody can go and change it in a regular knowledge graph. But if you have it on a blockchain-based system, you can say with 100% certainty that this actually happened. So I think that's a good use case. And I don't think we should be using blockchains to store large knowledge graphs. I don't think that's ever going to be a good use case. But in any situation where there's some kind of there's a need for a verifiable assertion, blockchain could provide the solution. So I take your criticism. I don't think it's going to work for all the potential use cases of knowledge graphs, but there could be some use cases that blockchain plus knowledge graphs could work. But that's my personal opinion. Oh.
I'm just trying to catch your word. So whatever you said was, if we use ontologies on top of the blockchain, that is a a very reasonable use case. So I totally don't disagree with that one. But what I claim is ontologies are not necessarily knowledge graphs. So yeah.
Sure. I mean, so what I mentioned was regarding provenance, not really ontologies like any general ontology. I do also think that ontologies could also work in one particular instance. So I mentioned that there are many different blockchains and they don't all speak the same language. They are all decentralized but fragmented. And now we have the same problem in the regular web world, where we have different data silos and we need to harmonize. It's a word that Deborah says all the time. So we need to harmonize all these knowledge sources. So we have a similar problem in the blockchain space where we have a smart contract that does some kind of an application. And we have this notion of wrapping tokens in blockchain-based systems. It's because you cannot use Bitcoin in an Ethereum blockchain, right? So you have to wrap it in some way. And I think in the same way, for more concrete application scenarios, we can use ontologies to wrap whatever the logic that the smart contracts are implementing. So I think that's a use case for ontologies. But my previous example was provenance. Blockchains will provide some kind of verifiable assertion for provenance that knowledge graphs don't really provide.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, this is not meant to be my Q&A, but yeah, feel free to chime in, Deborah, if you want to say something, or I don't know. Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
That's okay. I think that the encoding the meaning of terms in a computationally available way is what ontologies are all about. So ontologies can help, just supporting your statement of this is a use case for ontologies. Anytime we're trying to connect things, there's very few technologies that are better. I don't know. It's not surprising to me that we're getting fragmentation in, the next round of new technology, because that's just what happens with the silos. It's just, in yesterday's opening keynote, the person put up a quote from Einstein, something like, "In the midst of chaos, there is great opportunity." So I think that's where we are. Lots of fragmentation and lots of great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious, who in the audience is working in the blockchain space? Yes? No one? In knowledge graph? Everybody? Right. Now, question to you, would you consider using blockchains in knowledge graphs, or do you have reservations? Do you see any kind of use cases? No? Yes? No? Anyway, that's fine. Oh. Yeah, that's the alarm to give the...
Sorry for speaking too much. So maybe just thinking out loud, using blockchain technology to actually collect the data. And once the data is collected, it has to be kind of centralized and normalized in order to have the knowledge graph work, because we just use graph theoretic approaches to the knowledge graph as a graph, right? Once it's distributed and it's not normalized, nothing of that type works. But if we collect the data through the blockchain and then store it in a centralized version and use our technology to process it, then maybe it would be a viable solution for the time to come.
Right. Actually, yeah. So you bring up a good point, normalization. There is a project called Golden Protocol. So they are trying to build a canonical knowledge graph for the world. So what they're saying is there's a lot of information, there's a lot of ambiguous terms, a lot of overloaded terms, what's the truth, right? So they want to incentivize people, just like how Wikidata or Wikipedia is doing with their governance system, which has worked.
That's centralized.
That's centralized. So I believe golden knowledge graph is decentralized to an extent. It's still run by, like, the architecture is provided by that particular company. However, they are incentivizing people to provide good quality content or verify whether this is the correct fact. So and we are seeing these kinds of incentive mechanisms that didn't really exist in the more centralized knowledge graph creation process. And this can also, like, help people put out their content on the web before it's completely done, so that other people can benefit from these intermediate results, because you can build off of something that can be attributed to you, and it doesn't have to be, like, fully done. Which is the case in most academic projects. Like, you are not really releasing your hard-earned data set before your publication is out. So those kinds of things are possible with blockchain plus knowledge graphs.
Yeah, we had this talk by Ben, who was talking about the collecting data from very far parts of the world where there is not that much technology, but the cell phones essentially. This is the way to collect the data, right? It's just like, I can't think about an application that can be run on top of this data before we download it to like some type of a centralized database, normalize it, and then we can apply our methodologies. But we need a way to collect this data, and without this blockchain system, we wouldn't be able to collect it, and that would be just like, it's a wonderful technology that we have. It just cannot be applied before the data is collected.
Deborah, did you have something to?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something you just said. So let's say I publish my work on the blockchain that's only partially done, because I want to, like, stake out the ground.
Yep.
But now I want to refine it, and I want to have, like, a lot of metadata around the refinements. So, like, it's derivative from this, I've changed it this way, I've got this new assumption. So I'm going to annotate it with terms from some good ontology. Does that work? Like, I'm just wondering how we make these iterative derivative products on the blockchain. I'm not sure.
It's like doing a transaction, right? So every transaction could build up on a previous transaction. So it's like a data transfer activity. So let's say I give you some of my unfinished work, and then you modify that with some annotations. So in order to stake your claim on the new derived work, you could put an assertion on the blockchain. You can, like, sign it and put it in a central server, so it's somewhat similar. And then anybody can verify if actually timestamping would then be an issue. But let's say you put it on the blockchain, so you have some kind of an irrefutable claim that you use my data and you modified in such and such way, and there's some proof, and I also get kind of credit. Oh, Deborah used my work, so my work must be good.
So I'm wondering, is this then a new source code control system with more annotation, with more signature, with more credit assignment? That's
yeah, it doesn't have to be source code. Like, it can be any kind of data attribute. Yeah,
that's where I know these change management systems the best.
Yeah,
but maybe this is a new fancy change management system that's more trustworthy, that's more transparent, that's more credit transferring or more credit fair.
And it's more open. So if you take a traditional version control system, you have to have an account in some central server. With this kind of a system, you don't really have to have an account. Like, it's permissionless. Anybody can join and leave anytime. So if I want to participate, I'll join. Like, somebody will join and, like, take your annotated content and make another annotation, but they don't have to stick around forever. Or, like, so.
No, Deborah, it looks like you have just come up with a very great idea for a startup. Yeah, like. Yeah, but generally, yes. So, like, in my world, in machine learning, what's going right now is that, like, thousands and thousands of research groups are working on similar things at the same time, and it's very important for them to put their work first, right before the others. And an approach would be to publish an idea on a blockchain and just work it through, and have all the improvements and adjustments and enhancements stored on the blockchain as well. And you actually don't really have to annotate it yourself. So the system could annotate it automatically, especially given all these new, opportunities that we have with ChatGPT and systems like that. So the annotation might be automatic, but at least you have your right. Like, you published this idea first on the blockchain. It was a very rough idea, but you can claim that you were the first, and others would just kind of be able to take this idea and expand it as they want, but it's going to be a collaborative process then, because right now it's all silent. Everyone is working on their own. Everyone wants to be the first.
So GitHub is an advanced product coming out of all this work. Is that what I just heard you say? Isn't that
You could think about putting it into like the next generation GitHub. Like GitHub didn't come out of this.
let me ask it a different way. I see three different. I'm not very sophisticated in these matters, but I see three different technologies. I see taxonomies and ontologies over here, and then I see blockchain over here, and then I see, what's the third one? What?
Source code. Change management systems or GitHub?
But here's my question about the three, the third of which I've forgotten. Knowledge graph, exactly. All right, so in these three areas, are we still doing research, or are we commercializing these, or are we standardizing them? Well, what's the principal activity? Where are we in the?
Well, we're doing all of it, although I don't think blockchain is so standardized. I mean, Oshani, I yield to her on that.
Well, look at that word. See, achieving interoperability.
Yep.
So that's a later stage activity. There's research has to go on, and use case exploration, and then at some point you standardize. And there it is, right? The second word up there is interoperability. So
Right.
that means that some of us think we're pretty far along and it's time to standardize. And some of us
Or
think we're just getting.
it could be like, really messy right now. Like I was saying, there are so many different blockchain solutions out there and no one knows. Like, I have another project where, there are these companies that say they don't want to invest in a particular blockchain because the next greatest and, latest blockchain is coming out with such and such features. So they're saying, okay, give me the interoperable solution. I'll invest in that, but not in a blockchain solution. So I think standardization is happening, but it's not done by any. I think there is. I should I should know this, but there is a standards organization for different blockchains. There are also, for example, Ethereum is as a leader. They are very much vested in standardization in the blockchain space because they have the most of the decentralized applications running on their platform. So they want other blockchains to be EVM compatible. EVM is their virtual machine that their source code runs. But interoperability, I don't think we have to be far along to talk about interoperability. I think we should talk about interoperability before the space gets messier. Right, so that we have room to fix any kind of interoperability issues before it gets even worse. But some solutions would die down.
So here's these three technologies: the knowledge graph, the blockchain. What's the third one again? Ontology. All three of them are aimed at gathering and leveraging data. The three of them all play a different role in that. And now ChatGPT has come along. And ChatGPT should light a fire under this community here because they need us. So are we ready? How do we do that? How do we leap at the GPT opportunity with our three tools?
Well, so Branimir showed an architecture that I took a picture of. I don't know whether he's on someplace, but his trusted knowledge framework for AI chat, KG. So chat decentralized knowledge graphs. And of course, the decentralized knowledge graph presumably is using some good ontology underneath the hood. So, and he had I'm just looking at the picture that I took. He had LLMs kind of at all these different levels, which I believe that right now this general field, all three of those ontologies. I know less about blockchain, despite the fact that I'm a big time collaborator and supporter of Oshani. I'm less literate there than the other two, where I'm probably a world expert. But I think that right now, Chat GPT has given us tremendous opportunity. And you're right. I think they totally need us because there's some fundamental limitations, despite the fact that advances are happening like every hour in large language models. But they're not uniquely well positioned. Like we have an unfair competitive advantage in semantics. We have an unfair competitive advantage in labeled semantically aware knowledge graphs. I presume we have an unfair competitive advantage in blockchain stuff, but
With respect to ChatGPT?
With respect to ChatGPT, I don't know. This one's for you.
I think there are synergistic opportunities. I'm not sure about unfair competitive advantage, but yeah. So for example, these large language models are good at processing large amounts of information and putting out patterns, right? So knowledge graphs are large, and blockchain transactions, like these systems, they produce large amounts of data, and we can actually use LLMs to get nice insights. And in fact, we can make smart contracts quite bug free. I teach a class and I actually ask students run your smart contract through ChatGPT for things like reentrancy bugs that are easy to find by computer code. And they say, yeah, ChatGPT found this error. So I think we can use ChatGPT for such synergistic advantages. But I'm not so sure about the competitive advantage. But yeah, maybe there is some that I'm not aware of. But
yeah, well, when you're trying to write a proposal for funding or do a new startup or something, you look for where you're the dream team, and typically where you have at least one unfair competitive advantage. So somebody else isn't going to overtake you in the next minute. So I look for that kind of thing, and I think right now the world is at an inflection point with large language models. We're not positive everything that they're great at, and we're not positive of all their weaknesses, but we can see a lot of places for synergistic improvements.
Yeah. Actually, there might be one competitive advantage that I just thought of. So, ChatGPT, as we all know, hallucinates, right? So, knowledge graphs have these, verified facts, and you can even tie it to a blockchain-based system. Okay, this is, who said it, when was it said? All those things could supplement some kind of result from ChatGPT. So that may be a competitive advantage that I didn't think of earlier. Oh, cool. Yeah. So we are moving out of the, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm working for Procter & Gamble. We are manufacturing, consumer goods. You probably use that daily. We use a lot of graphical model to understand consumer, to drive product innovation. But specifically to this knowledge graph and blockchain knowledge graph, if we say knowledge graph is a try to be semantic, right? To assign meaning to the data, to the knowledge we collected. And blockchain to ensure the trust of the whatever work you try to put there, right? I'm a practitioner. I'm not in any way a expert of blockchain. So my perspective is that we need to make sure the knowledge graph we can capitalize that, monetize that, in particular in industry, right? Let's say, for example, right now we have different data pieces sit sporadically, piecemeal in different system. There's no semantic meaning. Even, we have internal search system, usually take a lot of time, page by page, you find something meaningful. So the first thing we try to achieve is, can we leverage knowledge graph to organize our knowledge and at enterprise level so that it will like, increase your productivity. If we have some like useful applications, and then we think about, we should put it secure, private, trust, blockchain maybe come into the play. Given this, I mean, with above being said, I do see, like, in academia, all the papers, right? If you wanted to claim, you know, credit or contribution, you further come up with the idea. Indeed, use blockchain to track your ideas. I think it's a smart idea. Either, use knowledge graph or not, uh, you can put your stuff there and then track who used that and how it evolves. It is useful.
Yeah, actually, for example, in biomedical engineering, we had this great, session yesterday on healthcare and life sciences, and I believe this was mentioned in one of the sessions too. So from bench to bedside, in some fields, it takes about 17 years, and all these 17 years, these scientists are producing data, and there's immense value of this data, like in these 17 years, right? So it doesn't have to be in a product for other people to use the intermediate data sets. So, however, people don't want to put their data for the fear of being scooped up, right? So if we can have some kind of verifiable attribution that this is the person who said it first, which a blockchain based system could provide, I think that could change the world, because people can get value out of data much faster.
And just to augment that, so I'm going to put this data out. I'm going to claim that I did it, with these assertions. But then more than that, I'm going to also put some smart contracts around it, so I can talk about how people are going to use it or not reuse it. Because there's this famous quote from a friend of mine, Carol Goebel, who said, people would rather share their toothbrush than their data, which I totally believe. So this might solve the sharing the toothbrush and data thing, where I put it out there, I get credit, but I also put out some rules for how it's going to get used.
Yeah.
And actually, I went to TED. I went to a blockchain, or why you should care about Web 3.0. And I asked this of like, how are we going to write those good, smart contracts that like help us protect our data? I didn't get any great answers, but I think this technology is poised to do that.
Yeah, for sure. At least I believe that.
So moments ago, I was the first one in the world to suggest that these three technologies that I have trouble enumerating are going to be helpful to GPT. But what I just heard y'all say is that maybe GPT is coming to the rescue of our three protocols.
Yeah.
It was maybe we could solve some of those problems with GPT. Like, for example, discovering using some GPT clustering technology to discover the correct taxonomies, for example.
Yeah, well, actually, in yesterday's healthcare talk, Jan Zossman, who runs France, talked about how he used ChatGPT to build a wines knowledge graph. I'm famous for this wines ontology that got published 30 years ago. But so he asked ChatGPT for a good starting ontology. He happened to find mine because it's been published out there and there's all sorts of good examples. And then he used ChatGPT to build a knowledge graph. And he asked questions like, get me the 500 top Bordeaux's, which is, that's a time consuming thing that like humans don't want to spend their time doing. And he got like a pretty good thing. And then he ran it through web chat to actually ask, is there evidence for like this wine having high tannin, can you go out and verify that? So it's a cyclic, I think this is a marriage potentially made in heaven or some good place. We just have to find out ways to collaborate from mutually beneficial perspectives.
Yeah, I also want to add to that. Internally, we also try to work like, if you build knowledge graph, even in this conference, most of the knowledge graph, most of the thing you can do, you can leverage knowledge graph is upfront. You have to first have a graph, right? Most of them are built using ontology taxonomy, including a lot of human in the loop. So the idea is, can we build something, at least, a candidate knowledge graph using ChatGPT, like, basically for a lot of consumer has struggled about their hair issue, right? Damage, dandruff, etc. So if you have a hairstylist, they will generally trust a human stylist to do the thing, right? We used to build a chatbot, try to say answer consumers' hair care concern, but they don't trust the chatbot. Even the knowledge, either we do different versions. So the idea is, for the ChatGPT, even with smarter prompt, still sometimes the hallucination, the simple mistakes that they will have simple mistake. The idea is, can we have a knowledge graph? Is a knowledge graph built by human, or by iteratively collaborating with ChatGPT, so that you will limit your answer, limit your response from GPT, follow some graph, follow some limit, so that it will not totally off the chart. That's the idea. Either hairstylist or esthetician, right? If you have a skin issue, you're gonna ask another dermatologist. Something look like that. That indeed, we are thinking could be really exciting in future, but we don't know like how long it will take. Even 3 years ago, entity detection from the natural language is a really challenging task. But right now with ChatGPT is quite easy. Without even intensive coding, you can do decent entity detection, identification from the textual information.
I think we have to close out the session. Thank you so much. It started a bit cold, but it got like really warm. So thank you for participating. I know this is a small group. So next up, I invite Deborah to give a little bit of closing remarks.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for coming. For those of you remote, thanks for hanging in there. This has been a really fabulous discussion, and I think we've surfaced some number of potentially interesting next steps. So one question that you don't have to answer right now, but either Oshani or me, you can get back to. One question is, should we do another one of these next year? And is there any particular theme or sub-theme that you would like to see explored more? And I am really interested in this thing that you brought up of like, where does large language models help ontologies and knowledge graphs and blockchain, and where does blockchain, knowledge graphs, and ontologies help large language models? And where does that happen today? And where does that happen? I don't know. Everything's going so fast. I want to say 3 months, but normally I would say a couple years from now. But every time I look at my phone, I'm seeing 25 articles I should be reading. Breakthroughs. So, did you have an answer to that? Good. Give a suggestion.
That's great with everything that they're advancing in a way. So you asked like what could do next year as a suggestion is with all these large language models and ontologies, knowledge graphs, the blockchain together, what can we do to alleviate the world hunger and world poverty? If we have a session next year with supporting the 17 sustainable development goals, so with enhancing the power of AI and to alleviate world hunger. People every second we are spending, some part of the world, people are hungry and dying, and with the diseases and things that we can prevent. So if we put our heads together, and that we might come up with some great solutions. That's when you say you want to do next year, maybe think about that.
Yeah, so I could see, there have been AI for social good, semantic web for social good, web science for social good. Actually, Oshani and I have both co-run some number of those. I could imagine doing one of these with, a general call for research and vision, but then also specifically ask for use cases around the 17 or some kind of social good topic. That would be quite interesting.
Also forgot to add the climate change and climate refugees.
Yeah. There's no end of, giant problems that some of this could address. Yeah. Here. Okay.
there's nobody here at this conference. Look how small the audience is. So for next year, we should understand why 1,000 people didn't come to this conference, because this is, to my way of thinking, is a very hot area. Why did so few people come? We need to know why.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, the organizers are amazing human beings, but some of the advertising didn't have, there's plenty of logistical things, like some of the advertising didn't happen in a time.
Yeah, those are easy to find, but and they may in fact be the reason, but I don't think maybe it's
not enough.
topical. What was the topic? What was the language that we used to explain it that attracted, or maybe the people here have that competitive advantage now because we attended and they didn't.
Well, I'm giving a keynote tomorrow, and I was listening to like podcasts that I don't normally listen to, some like really general podcasts. And one of the themes that came out from my listening to all these podcasts is like, why did large language models explode at this kind of pace? And one of the reasons is because they've got a natural language interface. The barrier to entry is minuscule. Barrier to entry to ontologies is not minuscule. Barrier to entry to knowledge graphs, not minuscule. Barrier to entry to blockchain, I think even tinier. I mean, even more giant. So, we're not there in like reaching out to people, a lot of people who could play and who could see the compelling, like in one of the talks yesterday, somebody brought up, they kind of have this flow. Like people just look at what comes out of ChatGPT and say, "Oh, I could believe that. I could actually use this. I could see, 10 positive impacts." We're not general purpose salespeople, which I think is part of the field's problem, but only part. But you're kind of a semi-outsider and semi-insider. So, what's your thought? Bad language?
Well, I'm also
Yes.
got to know. We got to collect the data on this conference as an input to the next one. What was hot and what was not, and what did people respond to, and which of those you've replaced what was there before. But anyway, I'm pointing at what was there before.
Okay.
Yeah, like those topics, and there are probably some others that help shape next year. But I'm just having done conferences. You just need to. We now have a lot of data because we've had two. Is this the second year or is it more?
This is the first year for the Decentralized Knowledge Graph Day. This is the 5th year for the Knowledge Graph Conference, but of course, kind of kicked off at the beginning of COVID, so it had some challenges. Also, to be fair, I don't have the main organizers, but I think this conference is still trying to figure out, is it more industry? Is it more academic? Is it more government? Is it more general purpose? It's definitely not the last one. The conference is still finding its legs.
Was it more research, or is it standardization, or is it commercialization?
Yeah. I mean, we're doing pretty well with vendors. I mean, we don't have a ton of them, but we've got a pretty good collection of important vendors here. We're not standardized. We have a little bit.
So
here.
did you notice that Wolfram raced to plug into ChatGPT?
Yeah.
So Wolfram Alpha is
Yep,
now
yep.
a knowledge base accessible to the large language model. I was wondering how many of the artifacts of this activity are similarly ready to be plugged into GPT.
Commercial entities are doing it. Microsoft was basically first to like really put that stake in the ground. But you're seeing like the Amazons and the Microsofts play like an ecosystem play. And then you're seeing other people say, I'm going to connect here or there. And the podcast, the marketing podcasts they're not saying this, but like, how can I create stickiness to my products? Oh, once I have, your data in all my different, like I'm thinking about a Microsoft Copilot podcast, where if you've got your data in PowerPoint and your data in Word and your data in Teams, it'll create actually a pretty good PowerPoint presentation for you. I should have tried it for my talk tomorrow, but I didn't. Oh, question back there.
I had a pair of comments. One is that my experience at this conference from last year and this is that it feels like a natural successor to the Semtech conference that used to be over in California, which is a combination of both vendors and research. Semtech was definitely more oriented towards vendors, but there was that crossover. But the other thing is that I've been playing with large language models, ChatGPT, and asking it questions on, can you author these Sparkle queries for me? And it's really quite capable. It does need guidance sometimes, but it can do some very advanced queries. And speaking with one of the vendors out there this morning, they were demonstrating to me that they've set up a large language model. It wasn't ChatGPT, it's something that they've trained, where they're asking their system natural language questions, and their large language model is authoring Sparkle to query the system for you and then returning natural language responses. So it's a hybrid approach. I'm not saying that that is necessarily the way to move forward, but there's certainly it's not being ignored, and vendors are definitely working in it. And there is definitely, there are a number of places where large language models and the foundational technologies in RDF and OWL can interact with one another without one trying to replace the other.
Yeah, this last thing you said, without one trying to replace the other. I think those of us who are like a little bit awake realize that we need to collaborate. And we have some complementary strengths, and we need to figure out how to leverage them well. And some people are going to make a lot of money from doing that. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We're a little bit over. Anybody else have some burning question, comment? Any more big insights from conference organizers? Oh, got one.
Yeah, maybe some feedback. I'm gonna send in formal feedback later on. So it's like I think the advertisement of this conference is not good. Commonly people may not see that. As you said, you are not salesperson. So my process to come to the conference, right? First, I found this through LinkedIn or somewhere, and then when I tried to register, the website said, the conference registration already closed. I'm feeling puzzled. How come? So I sent an email to the organizer, the email on the website, and then they say something's wrong. So they opened the registration. I was able to do that, and then I tried to book the hotel. Again, same thing happened. Say there's no room available anymore for this conference block, the discount for this hotel. I said, okay, I'm okay to book, to pay extra to live in the hotel. After I pay for the hotel, I naturally wanted to let the organizer know, say, okay, the hotel room seems is limited, and they say no, there's still rooms. A lot of logistic issue can be improved. Hopefully next time.
And we also experienced a bunch of those, and we're insiders, but we're not the big insiders. We're semi-insiders.
All right. So
Okay.
I think we should close.
Okay. Thanks very much.